It was supposed to be a groundbreaking project, but the mistakes and carelessness of a director will leave it with a tragic and devastating end. John Landris ended the 1983 Twilight Zone with blood on his hands, and Steven Spielberg was never going to forgive him for it. What really happened on the night of the helicopter crash in Twilight Zone? Why did the court grant John Landris acquittal even when all testified against him? How is this going to change the film industry forever? Follow us through this video as we reveal the forbidden truths about the scene that ended Twilight Zone. Lots of excuses were given for the cancellation of the 1959 original Twilight Zone series. Some said it was because of screenwriter Rod Serling's burnout. Others claimed that he was just too frustrated to fight for a renewal when the show was lined up for replacement. While that till today is still a topic for debate, we all know why the 1983 John Landis Twilight Zone ended. The American filmmaker was charged with involuntary manslaughter after he organized and directed a scene that killed 3 actors, 2 of whom were children. The original Twilight Zone series was loved for so many reasons. It spoke to our hearts while appealing to our emotions and imagination in a very unique way. One thing that many people cherished about it was the unique blend of science fiction, fantasy, and social commentary. The thought-provoking stories and unexpected twists set a mysterious atmosphere that always had us at the edge of our seats. But sadly, it was doomed to fail, and it would transfer the same hard luck to the Twilight Zone movie 19 years later. One of the unpopular reasons why the series was canceled was that the then CBS executive James Aubrey was not a very big fan of the sci-fi show. So he arranged for it to be quickly replaced with a comedy show, Fair Exchange, when the production hit a rocky path. Also, Serling, who wrote over 92 episodes of the series, was experiencing a severe creative blackout. He was further frustrated when the show went from half an hour long to an hour after it was renewed for the 4th season. Serling threw in the white flag as he needed to try something different if he was going to save his career. Following the series cancellation, Serling sold his rights to CBS and continued to create and produce other shows and movies. In 1983, famous American director and producer Steven Speilberg got together with director John Landis for the remake of Rod Serling's Twilight Zone. They were big fans of Serling's work, but they just felt that it could be much better. But this was going to be a project they were all going to regret. It was all going well until parents in the crew would watch their children die painfully from the impact of a helicopter crash. This was from a scene gone wrong that was motivated by Landis's carelessness. The 1983 Twilight Zone featured 4 stories, each directed by Landis, Spielberg, Joe Dante, and George Miller. While the other directors borrowed ideas from episodes of the original series, Landis decided to keep his segment authentic, and this might have just been his unbecoming. In his segment titled Time Out, he featured American actor Vic Morrow, who would play the character of Bill Connor. Connor was transported back in time to the Vietnam War, where he was a Vietnamese man protecting 2 children from the American troops. For his child actors, Landis violated California's child labor laws when he hired 7-year-old Mika Dean Lay and 6-year-old Renee Shin Yi-chen without the required permits. And this was not the only time he would do it. As would be exposed much later, Landis and members of his staff were also responsible for several other labor violations connected to people involved in the accident. All of this started when one of Landis's colleagues, a production secretary, would meet with one Peter Wei-Tae Chen. She asked that his niece, Renee, be allowed to participate in Twilight Zone. He agreed, and with his help, they convinced her parents. Chen also got in touch with his Vietnamese friend, who had a son named Micah. After the children were killed in the accident, Chen confessed that he was never informed that they would be working near explosives, or even in a helicopter. The only wrong he claimed he did was when he accepted payment from Landis under the table to bypass the state laws that did not permit children to work at night. According to the popular stories, Landis also did not seek a special waiver because he did not believe that he would get permission to keep the children up for such late hours. He also knew that there was no way he would get approval to have the children on a scene with that many explosives. The tragic scene was shot in Indian Dunes, a movie ranch in Santa Clarita, California. It was popular in the 80s and used for movies such as The Color Purple, Escape from New York, MacGyver, and China Beach. The scene required Vic Morrow's character to carry the two children out of a deserted village and across a shallow river while being pursued by American soldiers in a helicopter. In control of the helicopter was Vietnam War veteran Dorsey Wingo. Wingo had the helicopter at 25 ft from the ground, while gliding near a large mortar effect. He had a sharp turn 180 degrees to the left for the camera, and that was when all hell broke loose. Almost immediately, Landis had the explosion effect detonated while the helicopter's tail rotor was still above it. The metal lid on top of the motor collided with the tail, and this caused the rotor to fail and detach from the tail. Wingo struggled to keep the crashing helicopter stable, but unfortunately, this was just when Morrow dropped Chen into the water. As he reached to grab her, the helicopter fell on him and the two children, and they died instantly in front of their parents. Morrow and Lee were decapitated by the rotor's blade, and Chen was crushed to death. In Landis' defense, he claimed that the explosions went off at the wrong time without his permission, but Randall Robinson, an assistant cameraman, testified that Landis was warned severely on how dangerous this could get, but he just refused to accept suggestions. Robinson said that the production manager, Dan Allingham, had ordered Wingo to leave the scene when the explosions got severe, but Landis shouted over the radio, "Get lower! Get over lower!" Before Wingo could steer clear, he lost control and the helicopter crashed after spinning around in circles. Trial started and many agencies started investigating. By October 1984, the National Transportation Safety Board issued its report on the accident. According to them, the most probable cause of the accident was the detonation of debris-laden high-temperature special effects explosions to a helicopter at close range. This caused a foreign object to damage one of its rotor blades, which led to delamination due to heat to the other rotor blade. They blamed the pilot who was in command of the helicopter operation and the film director. The accident was followed by a civil and criminal action against filmmakers, which was going to last for a decade. Micah's father, who was on set when the ugly accident happened, also testified against John Landris. According to him, he heard Landris yelling for the helicopter to fly lower even in the face of the struggle. The four parents also testified in court that Landris never told them that there would be helicopters or explosives on set. But somehow, Landris and his team were going to walk away with this. After a 9-month trial period, Landris, Folsey, Wingo, production manager Allingham, and explosives specialist Paul Stewart were tried and acquitted on charges of manslaughter. Wingo, the helicopter pilot, will stir up controversies just when the heat was blowing off. According to him, he regretted that Vic Morrow had not looked up to the helicopter as he had instructed him to do. In his judgment, the actor had over 5 seconds between the time of the sound of the helicopter and the impact. He could have made it to safety before the crash. Wingo would also try to maintain neutral ground by saying that he was not trying to place blame, but this was not received lightly. The investigation agencies questioned Wingo's suggestion by reminding him that Morrow was carrying 2 youngsters in his arms while standing almost knee-deep in water as the helicopter, which was at 24 feet, dashed towards him. It's a classic example of defense. They are blaming the parents, they are blaming the fire safety officers, they are out here blaming everyone. Now they are blaming the dead man. It's incredible. Deputy District Attorney Leah Perwin D'Agostino. Morrow's family and the families of the children were compensated within a year, collecting millions of dollars from several civil lawsuits. The trial was described as long, controversial, and bitterly decisive. Refusing to be associated with the accident no more than he needs to, Second Assistant Director Andy House had his name removed from the credits of Twilight Zone, the movie. This was the first time a director was charged due to fatality on set. Film agencies were going to learn from the fatal accident, and this caused a more thorough review and revamping of safety procedures during filming. Warner Bros. Organized a dedicated safety committee to establish industry-acceptable standards for all aspects of filmmaking. The Directors Guild of America's Safety began the consistent release of safety bulletins for its members and also established penalties for defaulters of their safety protocols. On a more personal level, Speilberg, who used to be a close friend of Landris and who was also a co-producer of the film, would after the accident cut all ties with him. According to him, the crash made him grow a little and left everyone who worked on the movie sick to the center of their soul. No movie is worth dying for. If something isn't safe, It's the right and responsibility of every actor or crew member to yell, "Cut!" Landris, speaking on the accident, said, "There was absolutely no good aspect about this whole story. The tragedy, which I think about every day, had an enormous impact on my career, from which I may possibly never recover." If you enjoyed this video, there's a good chance you'll also enjoy the one showing on your screen right now. Click, enjoy, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. See you on the next one.